We're talking global pre-assessment.
X marks the spot.
Here, there, and everywhere in between.
We're going to explore 5 key questions.
All that and a good deal more after the break.
Welcome, all you beautiful people. We're talking global pre-assessment. I'm Nick. That's Eric. We're the Get Good Guys.
And this is the Get Good Guide. It's global pre-assessment. A not at all technical term.
Yeah.
Very natural.
Very natural. I might vote we change the name of this unit to Here There Be Monsters.
That's not a bad idea, right? So, and that does tell us a lot about the unit, right?
Indeed.
It is a map. It's a mapping exercise, starting with X, which, if I'm not mistaken, marks the spot.
I've heard that once or twice.
I think it's somewhere, I believe it was Brothers Grimm. I think it was Cinderella or possibly Sleeping Beauty, where they were searching for a pirate treasure. We'll check on that.
Some sort of booty reference for sure.
Definitely right? Not at all problematic. So the unit does start, right? This is a unit that comes after global goal setting. And the beauty of goal setting is you're going to know where you're trying to go.
Sure.
That's the X. That's what marks the spot. But as we discussed, right, you need a bit more than just where you want to end up.
Right.
You got to know where you are. Mm-hmm. You got to think about the path. What's in between where you are and where you want to be.
Sure.
And how are you going to navigate that?
Yeah, and I think on the last unit, maybe the one before, we spoke about this idea of the map, about reading a map, right? And knowing where you're going to go is really not that helpful, right? If you don't know where you are.
Right.
If nothing else, you need at least those 2 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And in truth, to map a very efficient journey, you need to take a hard look at what's in between those 2 points.
For sure.
Right? I think we used the it might have been in the Patreon feed. I said something like, don't go straight up a mountain if there's a gondola 5 feet away.
Right.
Right. And so you want to use, and I think it was
that old saying.
That old nugget. Yeah. I believe it was Dwight D. Eisenhower who said that.
Yeah.
But
it's old.
But you had said, hey, it's not about a straight line necessarily. Sure. It's about an efficient path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you go through this unit, something that you make a literal map, and there's a series of instructions, 10 steps. Start, hey, X marks the spot, point an arrow, that's where you are. But then you start adding some things like, what are 2 personal traits you already have that you will need on this journey, right? And then the process sort of takes you through, okay, now what is a fear you have about this journey? And something that is kind of, you made reference to, right? But this mark off a corner of the map, label it, and label it, Here Be Monsters.
Yeah.
And it's not an unreasonable thing, if we start talking about kind of what are our fears in a journey. When we set about planning a journey, if we don't start accounting for what we're worried about, we run a very real risk of either being surprised by those things, or, again, as we so often say, failing to start.
Yeah, failing to start. I think the other possible issue with this, is this kind of can very quickly become a story we tell ourselves where we maybe try to pretend that doesn't exist so we don't prepare for it or something of that nature, right? Whereas if you are a little truthful about, hey, listen, this scares me, or I'm nervous about this thing, then you can either make a wide berth, avoid that thing.
Right.
If it's possible, great. Right. Or you can start working towards how you can accomplish or overcome or whatever that thing needs to be, but you can't do it until you recognize it's there. Right.
Yeah, that's very true, and it's something that I had not given a ton of thought to until you said it just now. But this idea of being honest with yourself in goal setting, crucial, right? And there's a lot of exercises in global goal setting in the previous unit, to get you to be honest with yourself, and frankly in the story you tell yourself as well. There's a lot about this sort of self-reflective honesty, but this is sort of where the rubber meets the road. On that, I guess it was not intended, but this is where you are plotting an actual path of your journey. You need just as much honesty in this process to say, hey, look, there may be a straighter line path, but it runs past something I'm worried about or I'm fearful of. It's okay to avoid that. It's okay to avoid a problem. It's okay to avoid a trap, even if it makes your journey slightly longer.
Yeah, well, and avoiding it may be the smartest option, right? It just may be. You don't have to go through it just to go through it. And that we talk about this often where, just doing it because you think you should do it, or just doing it because, I'm tough enough to do this thing. Like, well, why are you doing that thing?
Yeah.
Don't do that thing.
Yeah. Why are you a tough guy?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The goal is to be good.
Sure.
Right? It's to reach the goal that you wanted, not to be, the dude that took the most hits.
Right.
Or the guy who's the most scarred up at the end, right? This is not a tough guy contest.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find very interesting about this unit is there's very little direction about where on the map to place things. Right. And you may find yourself surprised with where you place things, or where you don't, or how far away you place your goal and your starting point. And that's very deliberate, right? We did that very much on purpose. As a experiment's not the right word, but a little kind of way to suss out how you feel about your goal and where you stand.
Well, and that's even addressed directly in the unit, right? On the sort of second half of the unit, you'll see a question, which is, imagine someone just handed you this map. What would you tell them?
Right.
And it's an interesting observation. If you look at your map and you are remarkably close, right? If you drew an X kind of in the middle, which I think sometimes is instinctual,
sure.
And then you put the arrow kind of near it, you're like, oh,
hey,
you probably think you're fairly close. Right? This is a fairly achievable goal. And I think there are some people who will maybe sarcastically even draw the X on the map and then draw the arrow like 4 pages later, right? Or something, trying to be kind of cutesy about it. But sure, okay.
Yeah, on a sticky note across the room. I mean, we love sticky notes.
Everybody loves a sticky note. First of all, we're not unique in that.
TM.
Are we better than everyone at sticky notes? Yeah. I mean, I think if there were a national championship of sticky notes, we'd be in the top 3.
I would say
we'd be on the podium.
Probably not a national championship because we exist. Right?
There's that too. Nobody wants to compete. That's fine. It's fine to make a map that makes sense to you, obviously using the unit's instructions, but then reflect on it. Take a look at it and say, okay, what would you tell someone if they handed you this map? And that's what you're going to tell yourself. And that's when we kind of get into the latter portion of the unit, which is the 5 key questions.
Right. And these refer pretty directly to the previous unit, right before this, our global goals unit, about where you stand, what you're trying to achieve, and how you might go about some of those things.
And so, right, looking back over the last units, that you do going into this, you answer these questions, right? Which are, where are you?
What is the first actionable step?
What is a crucial early milestone?
What is your most important goal?
And how will you know you're done?
Ooh, that great one.
That great one.
That's a good one.
We love that one. And so by sort of compelling yourself to answer these 5 questions before even beginning, we have a very clean understanding of where we are, where we want to go, what's in between us and that point, right? And then once we're there, we got to remember to stop. And that's a weird thing to say, perhaps, but it is the entirety of phase 4.
Be done.
Be done. Right. Be done. Enjoy being done. Enjoy what you've been able to do, and then be done. Move on.
Well, and I think it'll be interesting to see how people explore this unit, especially if maybe the time they set apart from the last unit isn't so close together, right? To see if these 5 things, not that you can't look back at what you've done, and you definitely should, but see if after doing this mapping exercise, or even just after doing the last exercises on the global goals unit, if these 5 questions line up to how you answered them on the previous unit. Would be interesting to see. Yeah,
the time betwixt units will very much affect the way that the unit unfolds for each person. And that's something that, as a user of the guide, you should be not just aware of, but also probably wield at times.
Absolutely.
And that comes with, the next unit appointment. That's the thing that you have to do to guard that time, and that's on every single unit in the guide. Lower right, when's your next appointment, date and time. Well, my friends, that timer says 9, which means that we are on our way out for this episode.
You got it.
We'll see you in the outro. Well, gee, thanks, everybody. We appreciate you taking the time, spending those few minutes with us for the Global Pre-Assessment Unit here in the Get Good Guide. If you want a little bit more, a little bit of that sweet, sweet Get Good gold, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/getgoodguide. We do appreciate your support, all of those members of the Get Good Galaxy and maybe even the Get Good group, that high-end tier of supporters. Thank you. We're grateful. We'll see you next time. As always, I'm Eric. That's Nick. We're the Get Good guys.
And this is the Get Good Guide.
There's a couple of wild and crazy Get Good guys.
If he guys, he guys.
That's brutal, dude. That's a
Yeah, well.
it's the wrong accent for the reference, and it's a deep pull.
Yeah, if you're going to get out there, just get out there. It's
and
fine.
it's a pun.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready?
If there's another way, I don't know it.
I don't want to know it.